The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
So I think Howard is like off in Europe gallivanting somewhere. So I'm gonna send him this and say, hey, look, some people are having to work for a living.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm gonna take him a photo too.
All right, listen, everybody, we've got a fantastic guest today, and he actually is somebody that I've known for a long time. We go back a long ways, and I am really excited to have Jonathan Bogner on the show today. And, you know, as you guys know, as I've started to bring guests on, you know, I'm really looking for people that fit one of my four pillars, you know, fit one of the DSD pillars. And I'll tell you what, everybody, we've got the poster child for resilience with Jonathan. I mean, this is like, seriously, this guy practically his face is probably next to the word resilience in the dictionary. But Jonathan has had a heart transplant among many other medical issues and scares to an extent. But what's insane about this guy is his resilience, and that's really what we're gonna get into today. So hey man, I appreciate you joining me.
Well, Ray, it's an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast, and I'm looking forward to telling people, you know, my story and how they can kind of like make sure that they don't have my story.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the things that, you know, as I try to talk more health related stuff, a lot of this is like, hey, you know, especially for, you know, once you pass the 50 mark, you know, it's not like it was when we were younger. You really have to pay attention to your health. So let's start off with like, when did all the medical stuff with your heart start? Because here's the one thing, and people can't, well, they probably can tell just from your face, but it's not like you're an overweight guy. I don't think you've ever been overweight. You've always, ever since I've known you, since back from 2000 practically, you've always been lean. You've always, you know, you look like you're in shape. You look like you take care of yourself. So talk us through, like, how did this heart stuff even happen?
Ray, you walk out the door and you don't know what's going to happen to you. And I think I am physically fit. I work out every single day, 7 days a week. And I walk my dog an hour a day. So I'm probably working out 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I was never, well, actually, I'm in the best shape after all the incidents happened to me. But before that, I was still working out and walking. So what happened was I went to a film festival and came back. And in the shower, you know, sometimes like, you know, your wife screams up, hey, wake up, it's time to get up. So I went, you know, like automatically, I went to the shower. I was in the shower and I was looking at the bottles and they were like in Greek, and I knew something was happening. I knew something bad was happening. And then I came out of the shower. I couldn't speak. I had aphasia, and I couldn't speak for about 1.5 years, but I couldn't tell.
You couldn't speak for 1.5 years?
Yeah, 1.5 years.
Like nothing?
Well, yeah, because when you have a stroke.
Okay, so you had a stroke. You had a stroke. That was the first medical incident for you, was that stroke, and it happened in the shower?
Well, I believe it happened in the shower. Okay,
wow.
we don't know for sure, but I had two strokes, heart failure, and then I woke up in the hospital while I was alive. But I woke up in the hospital and I couldn't speak. My
wow.
observations was, and I'm taking, you know, it's both. I'm talking to you as like a third party, looking at myself, but it's also painful when I think back. So I had the stroke and the bottles, because it was so internal, I couldn't, no one was talking to me in the bathroom. So I could see the bottles. I couldn't read them. And I feel like experience a stroke. I had 2 strokes. So when eventually I went to the hospital, and they determined 2 strokes, aphasia, meaning I couldn't speak. And so everyone around me was talking, and I couldn't write, I couldn't read, and the synapses in the brain. I was just looking at a fact that there was like 86 billion synapses in your brain. And I use the analogy, if you go to a market, you go directly to the frozen food section or the fruit section, right? I have to go the long way around. I have to think through where am I going? How do I get there? How do I manipulate myself to get to the fruit section? So and you just automatically snap a finger, you automatically go there. So I had to relearn everything when originally I remember going to the speech therapist, and the speech therapist was telling my wife, and I couldn't say my own wife's name.
Wow.
My wife's name is so simple, Cindy, and I was saying, and I could barely say Candy.
Yeah, well, that could get you in trouble. You start calling Cindy Candy, she might be like, "Wait, what the hell?"
Yeah, exactly.
But let me ask you this about the stroke, because I mean, personally, I'm very interested. Knock on wood, God forbid. I hope I never get one. But and I hope nobody listening ever gets one. But is there any way to know it's happening? Like, do you feel? I know with like a heart attack, sometimes there's numbness in the left arm or left side of the body. I know people start to kind of sweat profusely, but with a stroke, are there any signals or things that start to happen to where, God forbid, if anyone listening feels those things happening, at least maybe they have some awareness that they're having a stroke? Or is there anything you remember?
So, talking to you and also your viewers, nothing. Okay.
Wow.
It's a snap of a finger. I mean, random things happen, and you can't plan, you can't predict. You have a stroke, and in my case, I'm not sweating because I was in the shower.
Yeah. Wow.
but so going back, I had the stroke, no warning, and ultimately, after having the strokes and not being able to speak, and I knew at that moment that therapist was wrong, because at that point I was like 45 years old, and it's like this is like the kind of the it's a great age. That's a great age to when you really know what you want to do, and you're achieving your goals, and it's also your biggest income producing years. So I was smacked down, literally, and had to rebuild myself both mentally and physically. And the mental part, I had to relearn English. I mean, I really had to relearn English. And so I was putting simple words together. And I remember going to my company when I was shutting my company down, and it was so, everyone was crying, I was crying, everyone's crying, and I could barely get, 2 words out together, like, I'm shutting, I'm sorry, this happened. So when I had the stroke, I had what's called aphasia. It ultimately, clearly, I can speak, right? I mean, unless you knew me, which you kind of actually did know me before, I was speaking really, I spoke too fast, but at the same time, my intonation was, I spoke like I was from Holland or Sweden. There was no movement, and so what happened was I got a defibrillator in my chest.
Let me ask you this about the aphasia and the speaking. So did that just come back one day, or was the physical therapy that brought it back? Like, do you have to like when you go to talk, does nothing come out? Is it a vocal cord thing, or what exactly is it? And then how did your voice come back, or speaking come back?
Yeah. When I was in the hospital with a stroke and I was alone, maybe it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I had to, literally I have to poop, and I was left alone with this steel gurney, and I couldn't yell out to my nurse. And I'm like, oh my God. And I could think, right? It's a weird thing. You can think, but you can't verbalize it. Aphasia happens to lots of people, including lots of famous people. And it's the synapses in the brain that are not working. Mm-hmm. So you usually have to have a stroke in order to get aphasia. And aphasia, I slowly learned to put words and sentences together. So it was a gradual process, and I had to like rebuild and reinvent myself from a movie producer to a reality producer. Along that way, I had to get, my wife actually insisted I get a defibrillator. And a defibrillator is implanted in your chest.
Okay.
And I could show you, this is
so that's a defibrillator right there. Okay.
Yeah,
it's about the size, like probably looks like a little bit bigger than like maybe AirPod Pro's case or something like that. Maybe not as thick, almost like a hockey puck almost. Okay, there we go. That's a great. Holy crap. So wait, so then that goes inside, they cut you open.
Yeah, so you have like I call it a zip, but they make an incision in your chest.
Okay.
And then they pop it in, the defib, and the defib is wired into your heart.
Wow. Okay, so there's a wire that
connects to your heart. That's why people always say, stand back.
Got it.
mean, literally, you spoke about Howard in the beginning of the podcast. Howard is our mutual friend, and Howard was here when I got 2 shocks to my heart. And he was the one that ushered in the paramedics. And so what happened was, a defib, if you don't know what a defib feels like, or the shock that
I do not. Thank God.
You have to be tasered.
Holy mackerel.
If I taser you, right, it will send a shock to your body. And the taser, you drop. This is in your body, and it resets the rhythm of your heart.
Got it. Okay. So, but it feels like, again, I've never been tased, but it feels like that. So like, it's like a real jolt of electricity. Does it run off a battery or something?
Yeah.
So
there's a lithium battery.
Okay.
And the lithium battery, this is my first defibrillator. And I, kind of like, it was, I used it, usually get a defib for 5 to 7 years, and then they have to replace it. So they cut open in your chest, and then they put the defib in your chest. It's wired to your heart. And ultimately, ultimately, when I got the heart transplant, they have what's called artifacts that the wires, they didn't want to cut certain wires that the defib, when they removed the defib, they call it nicely artifacts, but it's like wires in your heart. And I was like looking at an x-ray. It's like, what is that? Those are artifacts. Well, what does that mean? It's like leftover wires in your chest, but they don't want to touch it because it'll affect, what it could affect. They didn't want to touch it. So I have
That's amazing. So like those artifacts, those wires, they're just there? Like they're still probably there?
Yeah, yeah. They try to me most of them, but some of them residual.
That's amazing.
Wires are in your heart.
Wow.
So I had 2 defibs, and as I
You had 2 at the same time, or
no,
2?
no, I got
total?
one for
Okay.
7 years,
Got it.
and
Got
then
it.
they
Got it.
replaced it for the remainder until I got the heart transplant.
So that one you had for 7 years, how often do you have to get the battery changed?
Well, no, it lasts 7 years.
It lasts 7 years? Holy
Yeah.
mackerel.
Yeah, you usually last 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
First one lasted, the first 7 years, I only got shocked maybe 2 times.
Okay. Okay. And it goes off on its own when it senses an irregular heartbeat, like an arrhythmia in your heart. So your
Correct.
heart gets off of balance, and then it's like boom, and then it gets the heart back in rhythm.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Does it work flawlessly? Like when you have a defibrillator, do you not have to worry about having your heart stay out of rhythm? Like it always works, or could it?
Yeah. I mean, when you get, I know we're spending a lot of time on the defib because I feel
that's
like
okay.
you're interested. So with the
It is. It's
defib,
interesting.
they set the parameters of the defib.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if the parameters, if it's 120 over, 80, your defib will go off a lot. If your defib is set at, I think for me, my defib was set about 200. So the heart was like beating over like 200 or 250, and then it kicks in.
Got it. Okay. So they set it to your heartbeat. So like when I go run, obviously my heart rate goes up to, I don't know, 160, 170, something like that. You're saying they set yours to something high enough that, it's not going to go off when you're on the treadmill or doing some type of, okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah. So they set the parameters, and if the parameters are wrong, you go back to your cardiologist, say, hey, these parameters are not right. And so then they have to fix it. So when I got the second defib, and at that point, Howard was with me and Christine, his wife, and my wife, and I got back to back, and that is like really bad, back to back shocks in my heart, meaning the first shock didn't work.
Wow.
And then they did a second shock, and it worked. Now, if there was a third shock, I'd probably be dead. And it's life or death with a defib. It saves your life because 50 years ago or 60 years ago, they didn't have this invention, this defibrillator. Now you have it, and it's a lifesaver, because if you had my condition, you had problems, you had heart failure, you would 50 years ago, even 100 years ago, 50 years ago, you would die, right? My wife's father at 54, he died.
Wow.
So you don't have the technology. Now you'll live. So in my situation, it went out 2 times, which is really not good.
Like 2 times within 5 minutes, or within 2 minutes?
It shocks you if I distinctly remember getting shocked. So when you get, when you're talking about the stroke, there's no warning. Okay.
No warning. Okay. Yep.
The defib, you get maybe 1 second, maybe 2 seconds of warning. Okay, it's happening, boom, and it shocks you.
Got it.
And then in the next time, and I didn't realize, and I sat down, I didn't know on my bench, I didn't know I was going to get a second shock, and it was not in sync. So it really tried to sync me up. And so then I got shocked 2 times. And that was very concerning when I went to the hospital, and the cardiologist was like, whoa, he got 2 shocks. That's bad.
And when that shock happens, this will be the last question on defib.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you talked about it feels like you've been tased, which I don't think most people have been tased, but is it like somebody punching you in the chest? Like, is it really painful?
Yeah. So first of all, punching is easy. It's
Oh,
getting
man.
a horse kicked in your chest. That's what
Holy
it's like. A
wow.
horse and boom. It's that shocking and that loud.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
you can hook up your light to your defib.
That's insane. Well, you know what? I guess now that we've talked this thoroughly, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what those paddles are, right? That's what those paddles are when they're like clear, poof. And then you do see the body like literally rise up and down or move up and down. So man, that is holy
Insane.
mackerel. That's insane, especially getting it twice in. Man, that must
within seconds. But when they stand back because they don't want you to get kind of residual shock.
Got it.
The paddles go on. You're not holding the person down, right?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got the defib in. At this point, you've had 2 strokes in total, or how many strokes in total?
Aphasia, heart, heart arrhythmia. 2 strokes, heart failure. I had heart failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had told me that at that time they also diagnosed you with myocarditis, which is kind of inflammation of that heart muscle. So that was going on as well, right?
Wait, that's what happened to me before I got the strokes.
Okay.
That was the cardiologist said, we have myocarditis. For people who don't know what those technical words are, it's the weakening of the heart. As you know, you checked it out. So it's a weakening of the heart. That's what caused the stroke.
Got it. The weakening of the heart. And then, do you have any idea what caused the weakening of the heart? What caused the myocarditis? Was it a viral infection? Maybe you got at the film festival or something?
Yeah, that's what happened. I went to the film festival and I had pneumonia, like walking around pneumonia, weakening of my body, and it affected my heart. Came home the next day, had the stroke, was in the hospital, 2 strokes, heart failure, aphasia. I recovered. I was determined to reinvent myself, a movie producer, and I started to produce reality shows for the last 10 to 12 years. And that happened because I was looking for a change of employment, from movies to the reality. And so I'm joking, but that's what happened. I changed and produced all the time. No one actually really knew, because I wasn't like taking off my shirt. And because I'm thin, you could really see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could actually, it looks like, in a weird way, it looks like an apple.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And prior to this, you had no health complications up until this, right? Like
Never.
It's not like, and there's no family history of heart complications, or was there anything that made sense to the doctors, or was it, holy shit, dude, you just happened to get some type of viral infection that caused that weakening of your heart and heart muscle? And I mean, that's just what it was, huh?
Wait. So I never knew that there was a connection, right? Because you're kind of alluding to the fact you said, did you have any family history, right? And I never thought that my grandfather on my mother's side died of a heart attack, or I mean, because it has to be my parents, not my wife's parents. So we thought my grandfather died of a heart attack when he was like maybe 55. And then my mother had some issues. She had a valve replacement. We just never put 1-to-1 together. 2-to-2. We never put those linked together. And recently, about 6 months ago, my cardiologist said, you have kids. I've got 2 boys, adult male boys. He said, well, maybe you should check to see maybe there's a biological or genetic link. So when I really thought through this, so I had a heart transplant. My mother had a valve replacement. And when I went to all my cousins, a couple of my cousins' kids had issues with their own hearts. You know, one cousin, you know, he also had a defibrillator, but it was not it was not my male cousin, it was his son. So it almost skipped a generation.
Okay.
So we think that there's a link.
So maybe there is a link. All right. So at this point, are you sort of like, is your heart just getting weaker and weaker and weaker to where they're like, hey, listen, you're going to need a transplant? Like, what was that moment? And when was that moment where they said, hey, this thing, your ticker is only got so many ticks left? Is that how that happened?
Right. I'm so proud of you, because that was a very, very good question, because the heart gets weakened every time it gets shocked. So I had to take shocks, you know? So the weakening of the heart caused, you know, potentially the heart transplant. Yeah. So what was happening, it was a ticking time bomb, and I didn't want to, and I knew I was going to get a heart transplant, but you know, it's like when you're thinking about God, getting an organ, you know, livers, kidneys, yeah, but a heart, like, goes like, oh my God, how do you do a heart transplant? And I always thought I would know someone who had a heart transplant. I didn't know I would be that person.
Yeah.
And you know, a heart transplant.
You're like my heart transplant guy. I've got a heart transplant guy. Man, okay. God, no, that's wild. Like, it's like, obviously, and again, it would be different if you were somebody that, you know, had medical issues their whole life. You were totally out of shape. You look like shit. Like then you'd be like, okay, I get it, makes sense, but you don't fit the bill. So like, that would definitely be, I mean, that had to be tough mentally, you know, like to think like, holy mackerel, I'm getting a heart transplant. Like, did you ever think at any point up until now, like, did you ever think you were going to die, or like, do those thoughts come into your mind? Like, where does that fit into things?
Yeah. I mean, being, you know, you have depression going through the heart transplant. So I was listed on the heart transplant on February 6 or 7, meaning I was well enough to stay at home.
Okay.
You know, weirdly enough, the hospital's like, well, how many organs do you need? And I'm thinking to the hospital, oh my cardiologist, how many organs? I just need one organ, a heart.
Yeah.
Isn't that enough?
Yeah. Oh my God.
And the doctors, you know, the hospital said, well, you know, if you have 2 organs, you get bumped up.
Like, is that right? Like, there's a methodology to that? Like,
oh yeah, they're the procurement agencies. We'll get back into that. The procurement agencies who have the hearts, and they kind of transport the heart. So what happened was, I was well enough to be at home, and also I didn't feel like I was sick, but I knew I was listed, and so you know, in a weird way, I decided that it was like an out-of-body experience. So it's like, this is happening to someone else, but I'm inhabiting, and I'm in the body, but it's not happening really to me. So
wow.
It became real when I was, they did a kind of a biopsy, and then they decided that, like, okay, you know, it's really significant. So we're moving you up.
Wow.
And eventually, you know, they did a biopsy, and they go through your neck, or they go through, you know, they go through your neck, and then they just check the heart out, and then they also can go through your wrist or your groin. And so it's not a pleasant experience. Eventually they decided, like, I needed the heart transplant immediately. And then they put you into a pleasant word called a swan, but a swan is almost like torture, because you can't move your body and you have to remain parallel with the ground. And so they're monitoring everything within your heart. And in order, when you go to the hospital, Cedars has this mechanism called a swan. So it's other hospitals have it, but it's not widely known. But at certain hospitals they use it. I was in the hospital because they did a biopsy, and they decided that right now it's so critical, you have to be in the hospital.
Wow. Okay. So they said, "Hey, we've bumped you up on the list, but in the meantime, you no longer can stay at home. You need to come." They checked you in.
Yeah, they checked me in.
Okay. So you basically started living at the hospital. How long were you basically there until the heart transplant operation?
Yeah, I was there for 30 days.
30 days?
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, like the statistics are, getting an organ. There's like 100,000 people, a day, that need an organ, right? And there's only 3,500 people that get a heart in 1 year, right?
1 year?
There's 3,500 people get a heart pretty much every year in the United States. But there's usually between 10,000 that need a heart. I don't know what happens to the other people. Most of these people, die on the way, or waiting for the heart, or they don't get listed. So what happens is I was on, 4 IVs to kind of keep me alive. And so they take me off the IVs in order to see how sick I am.
Wow.
And then they hook me up to the IVs because they have to prove to the procurement agencies, the government, usually it's UNIS, to make sure that he's sick enough to get the heart transplant. And in a weird way, they don't have to kill me, but you have to be acutely sick to get listed. And then they bring you back to life. So my doctor always said, I'm going to make you sicker in order to make you well.
So, like, what are we talking? Are we talking a few hours or for several days you're like this? Like, they take you off the IVs for multiple days, or is it just for a few hours?
No, they take you off of the IVs, and then they almost like a countdown, and then they see how your body adjusts, and if your body is like going into serious
like withdrawal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
arrhythmia. Yeah.
I mean, like, you really they put you back on. They just have to prove it to UNIS that how sick you are in order to make you better. And they have to do that every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I actually did it 3 times. The first time, then 2 weeks later, I had to do it one more time, and then I had to do it another on the 30-day anniversary to check to see if I'm still, weird way, eligible to get a heart. Because they don't want to put, Cedars also has a process, they don't want to put a heart into someone who will die.
Wow.
Okay. They want to keep their statistics up. So they want to make you, you need the heart, but they don't want to kill you, but they have to prove that you're sick enough. And so it's a that's
like a fine line. Like, I mean, I understand they don't want to put a good heart that seems like it's a commodity into somebody that is destined to die, as morbid as that sounds.
Yeah.
Man, that is. Do you still have the defibrillator in this whole time during the hospital, or do they take that out?
No, I have the defib in until I do the heart transplant.
Wow. Okay. So that defib is in those 30 days that you're in the hospital. It's in there.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. God damn. That's a long time in a hospital, man. 30 days. Like, do you remember, like, I could totally see depression setting in. I could totally see, that wears on you.
No, it's not your depression. It's suicidal thoughts. It's like you go into this spiral.
Yeah.
And I am inherently optimistic. And I think, and I call it rigorous optimism, right?
Mm.
Because in order to be optimistic, and also people who are optimistic live between 7 and 7.5 years longer than pessimists. So it's a good thing to be optimistic, because whenever you believe that you're going to get better. You believe that you're going to do something, okay? So you have to be optimistic. And it's hard work, because no one wakes up in the morning and says, showtime, I'm optimistic. You have to kind of like get there to be optimistic. And I practice rigorous optimism. So dealing with the whole issue with the heart, you have to create, which I believe a routine also is essential for everyone. All your listeners, you have to have a routine. Yeah, you can change your routine, you can adjust your routine, but everyone needs that kind of I use it as scaffolding of their life.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I developed a routine. And I was walking around the hospital floor, and I was always, they have a category of SWAN patients at Cedars. So it's like, these are the people I'm competing against, right? When I was walking around the hospital, it was like 7 people. They're competing with me. And it's like, I really wanted to get that part immediately.
Yeah.
And my nurses were saying, like, no. It's the blood type. It's the size of your body, and ultimately, as we know, I got a woman's heart because I was small enough to get a woman's heart.
Yeah. Because really the heart size, I guess it must be based on body size, right? Like Andre the Giant probably had a heart that wouldn't even fit inside your body, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you got a woman's heart? That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, so tell me about the day they told you, hey, we've got a heart for you. And how does that, like, was that a woman that just died in a car accident or just died based on whatever, and then she's an organ donor? Like, how does that process work? And then you had mentioned Eunice. Is there one central heart donation agency, or are there multiple companies that do this, or how does that even work?
Okay, so that's a loaded question. I'll try to deal with all of them. But Eunice is the organization set by the federal government that manage all the transplants in the United States, and then they allocate it. They keep track of where the organs are going. Okay. And then the procurement agency, I got, which I only found out last week, the agency who procured the heart. And yes, you have a year to write a letter, or you meet, it's not like YouTube, everything, you meet the donor family and you're kumbaya and it's so friendly and it's so nice. Those are rarities. Those are unusual things that you meet the donor's family and everyone is we go out for dinner. That never happened to me. So I wrote that letter after a year. And I was very complimentary that someone had to die in order to give me their organ. And, I have to think, that maybe the family doesn't want to reopen those wounds, and maybe there's lots of reasons. So but I wrote that letter after a year. So when I went through the operation, it's about 12 hours, right?
Oh, wow.
And so what happens is I got the news at about 3 a.m. and they texted me, which I ignored. They called me.
Instacart, your new heart is here.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Yeah,
but it was not a hospital line. It was like, for me, it was listed as the hospital. Then I would know it was the hospital calling me at 3 a.m. So I ignored the text. I ignored the phone call. Finally, they got a message to the charge nurse. She came in and woke me up and said, like, hey, there's a call. And then at that point at 3 a.m., it's like, who's calling you to wake me up? So it's like, there's a call. And I got the call, and then I was elated. And going back to one of our friend Howard, I called him, but I didn't realize at 3 a.m. he turns off his phone.
I think that turns off his phone at 3 p.m.
Well, yeah, but certain people, they keep their phone on all the time. But it was hard to find people. I found my wife and my son, and my son was going back to San Francisco. He just got to San Francisco that day at 3 a.m. Called him, and he turned around and drove back to me with me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's a beautiful.
That's a good kid. That's a good
person.
kid. Yeah,
I do. Okay. So anyway, so I got the heart transplant. Called my friends. Hopefully, I left word that I got a heart, so they called me back. And the heart transplant, they prepped me, went in for the surgery. As maybe you don't know, they have to remove the heart.
Sure.
They remove the defibrillator.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I asked for the defib, but they didn't give it to me. But you have to go on what's called an ECMO machine.
Okay.
It breathes for you. It's like a iron lung. It breathes through you. It's for you. And then and it was a difficult operation. And eventually, they don't connect everything, I mean, like, it's all those.
But for maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 minute, you got no heart in there. Like, so they take yours out. That's wild.
Yeah, I would say more than 5 minutes. I mean,
wow.
You're breathing on this ECMO machine that's beating and keeping you alive.
And pumping the blood.
Yeah. And then they kind of bypass that, and then they remove the heart of the damaged old heart, which I was curious.
What do they do with that thing? Yeah,
I asked, and I put into my request, and I think what they do is they use it for research, but they didn't allow me to see it.
Wow, man, that would have been cool to see.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason that they don't allow it.
And it's not like you can request to like take it home. They're not gonna like put it in a to-go bag, a to-go jar for you. There's no chance of that, right? Like you can't say, I want my old heart.
Yeah, believe it or not, right? I put that, and I asked the doctor, I asked the social worker, I really want to see.
Yeah.
I want to get my defibrillator back. And I want to see my heart.
Yeah.
And they just totally ignored that.
Wow. They didn't even give you your defibrillator back?
No.
Wow.
No, this is the original defibrillator, the first one.
Wow.
And I was very lucky to get that from the cardiologist because it's not kind of allowed.
Yeah. By the way, I have to imagine with a heart transplant, it's similar to heart surgery. I mean, they cracked you open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they crack you open. Okay. So like, I remember my dad had heart surgery, and man, I was with him that whole time. And then the next day, they want to get you up right away and get you moving and all that. And I remember, my dad was a tough as nails guy, but man, that first time they lifted him up, and I'm curious if you felt the same because of, cracking you wide open and breaking your rib cage. That was pretty painful too, right? When they stood you up. I wonder if having a new heart had any additional pain to it, or do you remember any of that?
I mean, pain is inevitable. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, like especially when you get an organ. There's a Buddhist saying, "Suffering is optional." I had pain and I suffered. Just getting, and they do that all the time. They want you to get, they psychologically and emotionally, and they also want to see if the heart is really working right the way it should work. But they got you, and it is unbelievably painful. Oh. And I also lost, the next day they did another surgery and they removed my gallbladder. And I had like all these devices that were pumping, the blood and all the urine and everything I was connected to. So it was a very challenging thing to even walk for literally 5 steps, but I got up and moving, and you couldn't work out. You really couldn't do anything because your ribs were
oh yeah,
broken, and then they have this. They kind of like wire your rib cage together, so the wires are still in my chest.
Got it.
When you go through security, and you have to tell them that that you've got wires in your chest.
You still have them? Like those wires are forever?
Yeah, forever. Certainly, my meds are forever, and the wiring is forever.
That's amazing. All right, we'll talk about the meds in a second. So to finish off on the lady whose heart you got, so you were never able to this day to know who she was, her family, or anything like that. Like that's sometimes
so they give you 2 pieces of information. They will tell you the sex. They told me it was a woman, and they will usually tell you round about the age. So her age was around 45. Okay. So I got a younger heart, and biologically younger, and then the sex, and that's all they tell you.
Got it. So you got a 45-year-old woman's heart, and then did you go through menopause after?
Yeah. That's very funny. Yeah, I mean, you could also say, I'm really, I could go to, I have a bathroom, right? I could be a vet.
There you go. You're in touch with your sensitive side now as well, right?
Well, I mean, you go, when you get a woman's heart, the heart has memories. We didn't even go
really?
into.
You think so?
I mean, there's studies about muscle memory, heart memory. So the heart has, and they say when you got someone else's heart, do you have cravings for other types of food, right? Literally.
That's wild.
So I mean, the real kind of what is the difference between a man's heart and a woman's heart? Women's hearts are smaller. I'm a small guy, so I can handle a woman's heart. And then there's a pain threshold.
Okay.
Women have a higher pain threshold than men.
I believe that 100% after the concept of childbirth.
Yeah. They have a much higher pain threshold, and then what I didn't know that women's when you get an organ transplant, especially a heart, there is hardening of certain veins and arteries. So there are what I got was the woman had a virus called CMV. About 50% of people have that virus. I didn't have that virus. I now have that virus.
Oh, got it.
And it's I'm still going through it, right?
What year was this? So when was your actual heart transplant?
Yeah, my heart was 2022 coming
Okay.
up for,
Oh man.
and
Yeah.
August 8th.
August
So
8th.
so it's kind of like come up
Coming up on 2 years.
Well, you're right. It's like 20 months.
Okay.
May,
Okay.
June, July, August. Yeah, about 20 months.
And then is there like is the first 30 days super critical or 60 days super critical to like make sure it takes? And
Yeah.
Is there the possibility that for whatever reason a body rejects that organ? I would think so.
Yeah. So that's why they put you on immune suppressive
Okay.
drugs.
Okay. Got it. Yep.
So I'm on 3, as you said, for life.
Yeah.
Lifetime drugs that I'm on, and they have side effects, and 3 of them, and I will be on them for the rest of my life.
For the rest of your life. And that suppresses your immune system in order for it not to reject that organ. But then at the same time, you have, I guess, less of an immune system, right? So could you be more apt to get cold, flu, COVID, whatever, all that stuff?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I have to be protective of myself. Wear a mask, crowded elevators, crowded restaurants, big events. I have to be very careful about those types of big events. And especially when I'm still having this virus. I was taking a drug, an antiviral drug, in order to suppress the virus. When I was on the antiviral, there was, it was non-detectable. And now that I'm off the antiviral, it affects, it's now detected.
That virus,
the virus is still there. Yeah, it didn't disappear.
Got it.
It's now, based on my blood work, it's now detected.
Okay.
So because I'm off the antiviral, so there's good things and bad things. So your blood count, so it affects your white blood count.
Got it.
And so you're absolutely right. You're much more susceptible to get cold, flus. Anything you can get, you'll probably get.
Wow. Okay, man.
Wow.
Well, you know what? That's a trade-off that I guess you just have to make. All right. So it's been 20 months. Any major issues or anything, or has it been pretty smooth? Like, are you back walking again? Are you walking your dog for an hour? Do you have the ability or the stamina to do all that?
Yeah. I'm doing everything. I'm like after 3 months of recuperation from the heart transplant. I was working out again 7 days a week and walking my dog every day. Pets are amazing, and I try to recommend anyone who has any organ that they have to have a purpose. And even with your 4 pillars, purpose, because you've got your self-awareness, you've got your resiliency.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have been resilient, and because life, you walk, as I said, you walk out the door and you don't know what's going to happen, and you have that it's unpredictable, it's chaos, and you have to just deal with the chaos.
Yeah.
So I have to demonstrate both physically and mentally resilience about dealing with all those issues and not letting them overwhelm me.
Yeah.
And not saying, I me. It's very easy to say, I me. And my response is, life is unpredictable. Some things happen and you have to just get on with it. You have to just solve it, because otherwise it's crushing. It'll crush you. And you have to be, as we kept saying, you have to be, resilient. You have to have a resilient life, and both in your work, in your family, everything,
Absolutely.
because otherwise life will crush you. And you clearly, you have to be authentic, because you have to do, you have to really dig deep with your psyche and
Yeah.
say, like,
Yeah.
do I want to survive? And sometimes you're like, hey, I don't really want to get up in the morning, and you have to force yourself to do certain things that you would say you take for granted. But at the same time, everyone wakes up in the morning and says, oh my God, I don't know how bad. It's like, well, okay, you're a healthy person. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
think about being unhealthy, and you have to just find the optimism and get up every time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you feel like now you have a totally, I mean, I would think you have a totally different view on life, to where, I mean, honestly, I get up some days and I'm just not looking forward to the day, or whatever.
Mhm.
Let's say I have to work on something I don't want to work on. But like, I don't know, now for you, because of, God damn, everything you've gone through, and it's almost like this is, your second or third chance at everything. Does that just not enter your mindset anymore? Is every day like, this is awesome, it's going to be a great day? Or do you still have days where, it's as if you've never had this surgery and, you're just dealing with it like we all deal with things?
Okay, so I am acutely aware that I got a heart transplant, and
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
acutely aware that every day, and I want to say, I don't like, it's not a gift,
Yeah.
but, talking to you is a gift for me. And I have a finite amount of time,
I got
because
you. Okay.
because I don't feel like, I don't know if I'm going to live to 70 or 80, or no way I'm going to live to 90 or 100. So I'm 63. I've got probably every day there's some issue. There's some
Yeah.
issue
Yeah.
that you deal with. And that's where the resiliency kicks in. That's
Got it.
where, like, okay, I am not going to allow this, and you can compartmentalize things in your mind. I am not going to allow this to affect me. And so you persevere. And so some days I don't want to go for a walk, and some
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
and when I was walking around, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, I was like, in my home, and it was the summer months, and I was just like doing, a couple steps a day. And every day I would do 10 steps, and I would do 11 steps, and I would do 12 steps. And every day I got better, and every day I got better. So that took a mindset that says, this is unfortunate. My view is like, it's random. It's
Yeah.
not all about, it's not why did this happen to me? It happened. So just move on. So I feel like every day is a new day, and I can do, with friends and family and wives, and, it's like, you can, it's not Groundhog Day, but every day I can make a new change. If I did something wrong yesterday, I want to do it better today.
No, I get it. So it is always top of mind. I mean, it is always there reminding you. In some ways that's probably good, because it doesn't let you have the woe is me time or the pity party, or maybe it even helps you from going into depression, because you're so aware of this, second chance, or this
Yeah.
this other chance that you've been given. That's interesting. All right. So tell us about, the thing I thought was super cool is it seems like now, with this personal stories that you're doing, you are wanting to help others, and you're wanting to help other people either tell their story, get help with their story. So tell us all about that.
Yeah. So Ray, I decided that I needed an outlet. Because I also felt this is, some people say like 9 lives, 10 lives. I mean, clearly I've gone through a lot of life-changing events health-wise. I mean, I want to list all the issues that I've had, for the last 16 years, from my thyroid to my gallbladder to my heart to nephropathy to not being able to breathe. So it's like I've done all these things, and it has not let me. I have to keep pursuing. Personal Stories was a website that I started just telling my story, and my stories are falling down the stairs, and it really hurt because I've got a house and it's the Spanish house, and it was not carpeted, and the stairs were like cement. So that was a big eye-opening thing for me, and just dealing with events that I have experienced. I put that down, and I thought to myself, wow, other people have their stories. And I put in my website, if you got a story. So I got some people responding to Personal Stories. And then I decided that, what, because I'm a reality producer, a film producer, a documentary producer, and I needed a new calling. I need a new direction. And I wanted to start Personal Stories. And then I'm starting to interview people who have caregiving stories, patient stories. For me, Personal Stories could encompass everyone, but I kind of narrowed it down to personal health stories and told from the point of view of the caregiver, because they go through, the caregivers, especially if it's a relative, for me, it was my wife. They go through their own emotion.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when I had my defib, right, and it went off, I had PTSD, I had to get a prescription for Zantac because, a couple times it went off, and it's like, okay, I don't even know when I go to bed at night if I'm going to wake up in the morning, literally, okay? So my wife, I'm not thinking about her. I'm thinking, am I going to wake up in the morning? And from her point of view, it's like, it's a weird thing, Jonathan, because I don't know if you're going to wake up in the morning, So I have to put myself in her position. What does it feel like to be a caregiver? And I'm interviewing caregivers, both, unpaid or professional caregivers, difference between family versus professional, and also patients. And what is the secret? I've interviewed people in their 80s and 90s, and is there elixir? Is there some magic? I recently interviewed this woman, 90 years old.
And she's the caretaker?
She lives alone, and she has a caregiver. But
she's got a caregiver. Okay, got it.
Right. So she doesn't, she got rid of her caregiver. 90 years old, physically fit. The woman goes and works out every day.
Love it.
Drives. And it's like, I actually questioned her. You've got, it's not a joke, you got one eye, right? The other eye you can't see out of, right?
Yeah.
Is your license valid?
She's like, shut up. Stop asking so many questions.
Right, she says, till I get pulled over.
Yeah.
Or till I hit someone.
It's valid.
It's valid. Right? So she's got one eye, she wears glasses, and she has a caregiver, but she doesn't like the routine of the caregiver, but she has a vibrant love of life, and she has purpose.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have any purpose in life, you don't have any structure, and you get old really fast.
Yeah.
Get on really fast. If you have purpose, this is what I do. So for me, I changed my purpose, but I used my skill set as a producer into personal stories. And now I'm the host of my own YouTube channel called Personal Stories. I interview people. And how do you maintain? How do you maintain? And what I have found, this is not medical. This is like the data is me personally interviewing people. They have a love of life. They also sleep, I mean, it's like they have good sleep.
Yeah, sleep is very important.
They go to bed at 10 or 11. And yes, everyone goes to the bathroom. For me personally, I could go to the bathroom, 6 or 7 times in a night, but I go back to sleep. So they have.
You go to the bathroom 6 or 7 times in the night? You get up that many times?
Yeah, because I'm also on this pill called Lasix. It makes
you.
Oh
yeah. It got it.
Yep, all the time.
Yeah.
So what I have to, not empirically, this is my observation. They have a lust for life. So they have purpose. And this woman is like, okay, she goes into a radio station. She does 5 minutes on classical music. Okay, I mean, I don't even know how she does it. And she can work her phone. She can use her computer. She's writing a new book. Okay, at 90 years old. 90 years old. So it's like other people don't do anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, they just wake up, they go to the living room, they have a caregiver feeds them. Caregivers normally want to give you pills.
Yeah.
That reduce your competency, and you're just like a zombie.
Yeah, they just want to sedate you so they don't have to deal with you. I mean, that's
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like all these pills, like narcotics, and it's like Seroquel, and all these pills that you're taking, and it's like you're totally zombied out, and they can maintain that, but they're not engaging you. And so my determination is reviewing people is work out, move, work out, and you have to have good food, good sleep, and interact with the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
You have to have a purpose. You really do. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a sense of wanting to, get up every day and accomplish something. I think that's absolutely key. By the way, so like now with this heart, do you have, when it comes to like things like cholesterol and triglycerides and those markers and those factors, are those affected or different because of the new heart, or is that more of a bloodstream situation or blood situation where it's the same as it used to be? Like, I'm curious, is your cholesterol better now, worse, any different?
Yeah. I mean, I was always on statins, so I mean, cholesterol. But when I went through the heart transplant, I became a type 2 diabetic.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was determined that I was diabetic based on the meds I was on, right?
Oh, okay, got it. Yep. Okay.
So the glucose. So in order to control my glucose, I do something, because I read this a book which is really like Glucose Goddess or something, called Glucose Revolution, and she talks about having apple cider in water, teaspoon of apple cider in a glass of water, 1 or 2 times a day. And I know, we're talking points, right? It's not going to be like, hey, my glucose dropped by 50 points. Incrementally, my glucose has dropped to normal levels, based on the meds I'm taking. And taking this apple cider vinegar in my water, it has dropped me below my range of being that type 2 diabetic. So
Got
I
it.
do certain things with my glucose, my ejection fraction, the amount the heart is pumping, as because it's the new heart. Now it's about 60%. And the heart, my old heart was at 8%. So
Wow.
that is no one's going to get 100. So it's the beating of the heart. 60% is phenomenally good compared to 8%.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, that's an ordeal, man. Wow, I really honestly, like, seriously, when I was thinking about, okay, who can be the first sort of person I talk to about resilience, I swear, I think I told you this in our prep call. It's like you just popped up and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like the poster child for resilience. But I give you so much credit, man. That's a lot that you've gone through. And, even just having the attitude that you have about it. And it seems like the attitude that you've had the entire time, because it could be so easy to slip into that woe is me, that depression and all that. That's fantastic. What I'd love to do is, as you get more of these cool personal stories, hell, maybe you can check back in with the Deep Shallow Dive once every couple weeks or once a month, and maybe share some of these stories, because this stuff is cool. Like, this stuff is interesting. And I also think with, especially, the audience that I think I have is, we all have to not take our health for granted, and we all have to hear about other things that are going on to provide us perspective, and more than anything, provide us motivation to look after our health, be our own, I call it primary care protector. It's not trying to replace your doctor, but hey, you've got to be in touch with your body. And the more we hear these stories and all that, so maybe personal stories can become a ongoing segment of the Deep Shallow Dive.
I would absolutely love that, Ray.
Yeah.
Check in with you, once a month, a couple of weeks, telling you met this person, and this person epitomizes of what your listeners not need to do, but this is another perspective. So
Absolutely.
the perspective that I take away, what I was always thinking, like, it could be worse, right? My life could be worse. I could be living in Ukraine. I could be living in Gaza and Israel, right? It could be worse. Health-wise, everything could be worse.
Sure.
I have managed to survive all my, from my heart transplant to my ejection fraction to my pulmonary edema. I have survived, and your listeners should take comfort that, dealing with all these horrendous health issues, you can survive. You can develop rigorous optimism, and being optimistic will save you in the long run, at least another 7 years of your life. And so I would love to report back to you when I meet people, and we can talk to about, as I said, that woman I met, who I interviewed. Her role is good food, good sleep, good exercise, and it will help for everyone.
I love it. All right, absolutely. We will absolutely do that. All right, Jonathan, I really appreciate it. Thanks for being open and honest with all of us, and we will check back in with you hopefully next month and get an update on someone else's personal story.
Thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it. I really like the interview. Thanks.
Sounds good. All right, buddy. All right, see ya.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.